I was stuck. And not just for a few weeks, years. My wife's third great grandfather was a complete mystery. We had his name. I had a few scattered clues, but the trail had gone cold. I'd searched every database, scoured newspapers, called distant relatives. Nothing. Then something unexpected happened. I asked for help. Not from another genealogist, not even from a local archive, but from something that sounded like it belonged in a science fiction movie. Artificial intelligence. And within a week, I had a lead that cracked the case wide open. Now, before you roll your eyes or think, oh no, here comes the tech talk, hear me out. This episode is not about turning you into a programmer or convincing you to hand your research over to a robot. It's about understanding what AI really is, what it can do for us as genealogists, and how to use it without falling into the traps. Welcome to Ancestors and Algorithms, where we explore the promise, peril, and process of using AI in family history. This is episode 1, AI 101 for genealogists, what you actually need to know. And by the end of today's episode, you'll not only understand the basics, you'll know how to start using AI as your research assistant without letting it take over the driver's seat. Now, the show's mission is to equip genealogists to use AI wisely. So I do want to mention there is a coalition out there of professional genealogists, some hobbyist genealogists, and it's called the Coalition for Responsible AI in Genealogy. They've gone through and created a few principles and guidelines. You can find it over at craigen.org. That is craigen.org. They briefly speak about some accuracy, disclosure, privacy, education, and compliance. So I highly recommend you go over to craigen.org and read through those brief summaries yourself. The tone of the podcast is going to be balanced. I want to celebrate what AI can do, but I also don't want to shy away from the risks. AI has done some amazing things for me in my genealogy research. It's helped me to find records and people that I thought once was impossible. But I also have had my fair share of risks and what we call hallucinations while doing the research, and I want to make sure that you are also careful when doing that. And one way that we will help combat against the risks and the celebrations are three main concepts that I'm calling promise, peril, and process. I'll explain the promise of what AI will do, could do, should do, and also then explain the peril of what might happen, what kind of hallucinations, what kind of risks will it show you, and we'll go through the process afterwards of help minimize that and to have those safeguards up in case you do come across them. Let's start with a simple question. What is AI? And more importantly, what does it have to do with genealogy? If you're picturing some glowing supercomputer that's going to take over your family tree, let's throw that image out the window right now. AI, artificial intelligence, isn't magic. It's not alive. It's not sitting there with feelings about your ancestors. It's a tool. A tool that when used wisely can help you find, understand, and share family history in ways we couldn't have imagined 10 years ago. And here's the thing. You've probably already been using it without realizing it. Have you ever been on Ancestry and had that little green leaf pop up offering a hint? Or maybe on MyHeritage, it shows you a record match for your great-grandmother. Those aren't just random lucky guesses. That's AI. quietly working in the background, looking at patterns in your tree and comparing them to patterns in millions of other records. Let's unpack the three main flavors of AI you'll hear me talk about on this show, using analogies that actually make sense for genealogists. The first one is machine learning, or ML. Think about when you first started transcribing old family letters. At first, it's slow. You're squinting at every word. That capital S looks like a J. That R looks like a wobbly V. But the more letters you read, the faster you get. You start to recognize the quirks. Your ancestor always dotted their I way over to the right, or they made their T with a long sweeping crossbar. Machine learning works the same way. Except instead of you learning from dozens of letters, the computer learns from millions. It spots patterns in handwriting, in names, in dates, and then it applies that knowledge to help you find more matches. This is what powers things like automatic record matching. Here's a quick example. You upload a 1920 census image to an AI tool. The machine has already seen millions of census records, so it can guess with 90% accuracy that the squiggle you think might be Annabelle is actually Arabelle. That's machine learning at work. The next one is natural language processing, or NLP. Imagine the best reference librarian in the world. You walk up and say, "I'm looking for stories about Civil War soldiers from Ohio." And they don't just hand you a stack of books. They understand what you mean. They find you books, letters, and even local histories, and they pull the relevant chapters for you. NLP is what lets AI understand human language. When you type into ChatGPT, "Summarize this obituary for me," it knows you don't mean retype the whole thing. It knows you mean give me the main facts, name, birth, death, family members, without all the flowery language. It can even handle historical phrasing. Here's a genealogy-specific example. You paste in a paragraph from an 1885 newspaper and say, "Highlight all mentions of people's names and relationships." That's NLP. Finally, generative AI. This is the flashy one. Instead of just finding information, it creates something new. It can write narratives, draft research plans, or even generate an image of what your ancestor's hometown might have looked like in 1880. But, and this is important, generative AI is a creative assistant, not a historian. If you ask it, "What might my great-grandfather's journey on a steamship have been like in 1905?" It can paint a vivid picture based on general historical facts, but it's not pulling from your great-grandfather's diary unless you give it that source. Why does this matter? Once you understand these three concepts, machine learning, natural language processing, and generative AI, you'll start to see AI everywhere in your research process. And that's good news, because when you know what's happening behind the scenes, you can make better decisions about how to use it. Now, some people may say genealogists are a little more skeptical than usual, and that's okay because we like to verify. Sometimes you may be given a hint from AI on an online company, and that hint may be a yearbook, it could be a census. And if we were just to go in and click accept, we could be doing irreparable damage to our online family trees. So it is always best practice to go in and verify those matches, those hints that we may be given, and never trust AI blindly. Okay. Now that we've defined what AI actually is in the genealogy world, let's talk about why it has genealogists buzzing and why it should make us just a little cautious. I like to think of this as the two sides of the coin. On one side, there's incredible potential, things that would have sounded like science fiction to genealogists a generation ago. And on the other side, there are some pitfalls that can trip us up if we're not careful. Let's start with the promise. What AI can do for us when it's working at its best. The first promise is speed and scale. If you've ever sat in front of a microfilm reader for hours, maybe days, slowly winding through page after page, you know how much time genealogy can take. Now, AI can process the same volume of information, not in a weekend, not in an afternoon, but in seconds. Let me give you an example. I was once given 500 scanned pages of a handwritten court ledger from the 1880s. Before AI, I would have had to block off weeks to go through it manually. But with an AI transcription tool, I could search for every mention of the surname Hathcock in minutes. Did it mean my work was done? No. I still had to look at each mention to make sure it was the right family. But that initial search saved me weeks of blind scanning. Think about the sheer scale of what's possible now. Millions of records, cross-referenced, indexed, and searchable faster than you can pour a cup of coffee. And promise number 2 is transcription superpowers. Have you ever stared at a 17th century parish register and found yourself wondering if that name is Bess or Bet? Maybe you're on the fence about whether that's a 5 or an 8 in a death record. AI can make an educated guess almost instantly, often with surprising accuracy. I worked on a project in Mexico where the handwriting was this elaborate, flourished style from the late 1800s. Even native Spanish speakers had trouble with it. I uploaded a sample page to an AI handwriting model, and in seconds it returned a transcription that was about 80% right. That last 20% still needed my expertise, but the AI saved me from having to manually decode every single swirl and loop. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But it gets you to a workable draft fast, and that can be the difference between stalling out on a document and making forward progress. Now, promise number 3 is pattern recognition. This is where AI gets interesting. Let's say you've got 2 men named John O'Neill in your research. One in Boston in 1910 and another in Chicago in 1915. You can't tell if they're the same man or 2 different people. A human researcher might compare occupations, family members, addresses, and neighbors, but only for the few records you have in hand. AI can do that on a massive scale. It can scan every John O'Neill in every city directory and census, spot that both Johns were bricklayers, and notice that in both cities they had a next-door neighbor named Patrick O'Neill. That might be the breadcrumb that leads you to realize this was the same man moving for work. AI doesn't get bored. It doesn't get tired of flipping pages. It can spot patterns in data that would take you weeks to notice, if you even noticed at all. And now, finally, the 4th promise, the one I wish would happen for everyone, brick wall breakthroughs. We all have that one ancestor who's been sitting on our research to-do list for years. For me, it was an ancestor whose maiden name just wouldn't show up anywhere. The records I had listed her only by her married name. Then, in a moment of desperation, I fed AI every single document I had on her, along with documents from her children and siblings, and I told it, look for any repeated witnesses, godparents, or neighbors. It came back with a name, someone who appeared as a baptismal witness in multiple family records. I looked that person up and found that he was the woman's brother. That one connection gave me her maiden name and an entirely new branch of the family to research. Did AI magically know this? No. but it processed connections across dozens of documents in seconds, something that would have taken me weeks, and it gave me the lead I needed to solve the puzzle. So the promise is clear. AI can save us enormous amounts of time, spot patterns we might miss, and give us fresh leads to explore. But, and this is a big but, every one of these strengths has a shadow side. Which brings us to the perils. Peril number one, and the biggest one, is hallucinations. In the AI world, hallucinations isn't about seeing pink elephants, like that famous cartoon about a baby elephant. It's when AI makes something up that sounds convincing, but isn't real. Imagine asking an AI tool for a source on your ancestor, and it confidently gives you Smith, John, a history of early settlers in Pomerene, Arizona, Tucson Historical Press, 1894. Sounds great, right? Except that book never existed. AI invented it because it thought that's what you wanted. This isn't just an annoyance. In genealogy, a fabricated source can send you down the wrong trail for months. That's why you can never take AI output at face value. You must verify it against actual records. And the second peril is bias. AI learns from the data it's trained on, and that data often reflects the biases of the historical record and the people who digitized it. If an AI model is trained mostly on U.S. Census records after 1870, it will have big gaps when it comes to African American genealogy before emancipation. If it's trained on English language records, it might stumble with Eastern European or Asian naming conventions. As genealogists, we know some communities were underdocumented or documented inaccurately. AI doesn't automatically correct for that. We have to be the ones to notice what's missing. Now, the third peril is false authority. Here's the thing about AI. It says things confidently. No hesitations. No, I think this might be true. And that confidence can be dangerous. If an AI tells you, your ancestor immigrated in 1892 aboard the SS Majestic, you might be tempted to believe it, especially if it says it with that air of certainty. But in genealogy, confidence without evidence is worthless. You need the passenger list. You need the ship's log. Without that, it's just a guess. A well-worded, convincing guess. And finally, the one peril that's more about us than the machine. Dependence. If we let AI do too much thinking for us, we risk losing the skills that make us good genealogists in the first place. Critical analysis, source evaluation, historical context. Think about how GPS has changed driving. We used to memorize routes, read maps, pay attention to landmarks. I used to print out directions on MapQuest. Now, a lot of us just follow the voice, and if the GPS is wrong, we end up miles off course. AI can be the same way for genealogy. It can make us lazy thinkers if we let it. So, we need to use it as a tool, not a crutch. The truth is, AI is a powerful tool. It can cut through the toughest material, but it can also cut in the wrong place if you're not careful. Which is why in the next segment, I'm going to give you the one golden rule that will keep you safe while still letting you harness all the good stuff we just talked about. Okay, we've covered what AI is, we've explored the promise, and we've been honest about the perils. But here's the truth. If you remember just one thing from this episode, it should be this. AI is your research assistant, not your researcher. Think about your favorite research partner, maybe someone from your local society, maybe a cousin who's just as obsessed with family history as you are. They might pull a stack of documents for you, highlight interesting leads, or suggest new places to look. But at the end of the day, you decide what goes into your tree. AI is no different. It can suggest, summarize, brainstorm, and even inspire you, but it cannot replace your judgment, your ability to weigh conflicting evidence, or your understanding of your family's unique story. Here's an interesting scenario for you. Let's say you ask an AI tool, summarize the life of my great-grandfather John Smith from these documents. It gives you a beautiful write-up, complete sentences, polished transitions, even little historical asides. It sounds amazing. But then you realize it included a middle name you've never seen before. Or it claims he was a blacksmith when you've only seen him listed as a farmer. Where did that come from? Without checking the original documents, you might not catch that the AI mixed up your John Smith with another John Smith in the same county. The golden rule, that AI is your assistant and not your researcher, forces you to slow down to verify every AI output against the source. Because in genealogy, unverified information isn't just a mistake. It's a mistake that can echo down generations of your tree. To sum up why this golden rule protects you, it keeps your skills sharp. You stay in the habit of evaluating sources, not just copying information. It prevents bad data from creeping into your tree. One wrong connection can spawn dozens of false branches. It builds credibility. If you share your research with family or publish it, you can stand behind every fact. Following this rule doesn't mean AI is less useful. It means you're using it responsibly. Think of it like having a really fast, eager intern. They might pull great stuff, but you wouldn't publish it without looking it over yourself. So today we've done a lot. We've stripped away the hype and looked at AI for what it really is in genealogy. A set of tools that can help us work faster, see patterns we might miss, and break through stubborn brick walls. We've also been honest about the risks. Hallucinations, bias, false authority, and the danger of leaning on it too much. And we've anchored it all with the one principle that will guide us through every episode of the show. AI is your research assistant, not your researcher. This is the foundation, and from here we're going to start building your AI genealogy toolkit. In our next episode, we'll get practical. I'm going to walk you through the actual tools and platforms I use, both free and paid, and how to set them up so they're ready to go the moment you sit down to research. We'll cover transcription tools, search assistants, image analysis, and even how to structure your prompts so you can get better answers. Think of it as packing your AI go bag for genealogy. If you found today's episode helpful, subscribe to the show so you don't miss what's coming next, and share this episode with a fellow genealogist, especially someone who's curious about AI but isn't sure where to start. I'm Brian, and this is Ancestors and Algorithms, where we bring the past to life one smart tool at a time. We'll see you in episode 2.